Just another case, I suppose you'd call it. As judge of the juvenile court, I've handled hundreds. Funny, though, the way you can never get used to them. Take Edie Adams here. She tried to prove she had nerve, ran off with a stranger who promised to marry her. Well, he robbed a building and loan office. The police picked him up, and here she is in my chambers, a delinquent. Delinquent in good sense. I can't get over it sometimes, how teenagers can be such suckers. Do you know what a sucker really is? Ask any carnival pitchman. The sucker is the guy who thinks he's smart, that he's putting something over on you. Take the old shell game. The sucker never wins. Why? Because the pea is really a ball of wax. It's never under the shell. It's under the operator's fingernail. All right, what's that got to do with you? You never fell for the shell game. Don't fool yourselves. A lot of you have fallen for it, thrown away a future like nothing in the history of the world. For what? A kick? Or a fling? A thrill? You think you're smart enough to get away with it, but you're just being a sucker. What I call being delinquent in good sense. Like these two, parked on a lonely road, just looking for trouble. And trouble is there, all right. If you look hard enough, you can always find it, especially if you're the sharp one. The guy or gal who doesn't have to listen to your parents' good sense or follow the rules, because you're smart enough to beat the game and take care of yourself. That's what this couple thought. Did you read about the case in the newspapers? They found out how it feels to be a sucker. Too late to do any good, but they found out. What they didn't know was that men like this make a practice of lurking in lonely lovers' lanes to prey on young people who don't know any better than to be there. Sometimes the victims are lucky. They lose only money or their jewelry, but not this time. These two were fortunate to get out with their lives, and that's an experience they'll never forget. Just one case, and there are hundreds more in my files. All normal, average kids who saw their lives ruined in a few hours, or even in minutes. Let's take a look at another one. Mary Hanson. There's nothing wrong with babysitting in itself. It gives parents freedom, it gives you a chance to make some money, and learn how to handle small children. That's true so long as you and your parents know the people. But Mary put an ad in a newspaper for sitting jobs. But the idea of going to a strange home with someone you never saw before just because he answered an ad, well, it's plain idiotic. You wouldn't go away with a stranger for any other reason, and just because it's under the guise of babysitting doesn't make it all right. But this time, even Mary's mother is fooled. You see, he gave her a phone number where she could reach her daughter anytime. An hour and a half past time, and Mary isn't home yet. About time to call that number he left you, isn't it, Mrs. Hanson? You think it's silly to worry, don't you? After all, what could happen to Mary on a babysitting job? But the woman who answers the phone has no family. She never even heard of the man, or of Mary Hanson. No, she has no idea where the man got this number. And now, Mrs. Hanson, it is time to worry. But I'm afraid it's too late to do any good after letting your daughter drive away with a stranger. Another headline. This one was just last week. It's in my files. You can read about it. Now, let's take another example. Ethel Ryan's case, one of the nicest girls in her school. Like a lot of juniors and seniors, Ethel and her friend Lynn thought they were too sophisticated for boys of their own age. They wanted somebody more glamorous. And the two in the convertible were just what they had in mind. To me, it would seem that the fact they'd never seen either of them before should make a difference. Well, it does to Lynn, for a minute, but Ethel talks her into it. It's daytime, Ethel says, and aren't they grown up and smart enough to handle any situation? Well, why not? Lynn agrees finally. Both of them got home safely. And they're really in luck, Lynn tells her mother. She and Ethel met two of the nicest boys, and they're going out with them tonight. Who are they, and where did they meet them, Mrs. Coe asks. Well, Lynn explains they don't know their names yet. She and Ethel missed their bus, and... You mean they picked you up, and you don't even know them? Well, her daughter is certainly not going out with strangers. She may be old-fashioned, she tells her daughter, but that's final. So, Ethel gets the bad news. Lynn's mother says no. Well, it's tough. But Ethel certainly isn't going to give up a good time, even if she has to go alone. Lynn wishes she had a mother like Ethel's, one who never forbids her daughter anything. See you later, Ethel says. Maybe. Well, I wish that were all there was to it. One girl out on a date, the other disgusted at staying home. But life is not quite that simple. When one breaks the rules, we pay for it. Walt soon decides that without Lynn, three's a crowd, so Tom leaves them alone. Now Ethel is really on her own. I suppose just about here the horse laughs are starting in the audience. All right, go ahead and laugh. Of course, Ethel isn't laughing. She can almost hear all the warnings she never listened to about being picked up by strangers. And here's something really funny. Go ahead, have a good laugh. Like Mr. and Mrs. Ryan and Ethel herself. And I can tell you about hundreds of cases. I hope you're beginning to get the idea. Mr. and Mrs. Adams are, and Edie too. She's going to a detention home for 3 months. Plenty of time to think about whether a few minutes of showing off or feeling sharp is worth a lifetime of regrets. If you're willing to risk that, you're not the young American men and women I think you are. Think it over. Why not get really wise, really hip? Don't be a sucker.
This is Captain Puget, and welcome to another program on the subject of safety. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting subject called, what is a stranger? And I'd like you to meet someone who is no stranger to many of you, Officer Hartsfield, who in her official capacity as a member of the Seattle Police Department has visited your schools many times and has talked to you. And I'm going to ask you the question, Officer Hartsfield. What is a stranger?
Stranger is actually anyone that your parents, boys and girls, haven't told you is your friend. A stranger can be a man or a woman, can be an older boy or girl, it can be an older man or woman, but any time that you see someone and you know them and you wonder about them, just ask your parents. And they'll tell you if that stranger, if that is your friend.
So a stranger isn't always just simply a strange face. It could be a familiar face.
Oh, it can be someone you've seen at the store or in the neighborhood, but you don't really know them. And that's the important thing to remember. You have to have your parents tell you, this man or this woman or this boy or this girl is your friend.
And of course, later on, we're going to find out actually why we should know people, what the important reason is why people should be known to us and not simply strangers. But in the meantime, I noticed that there are many of the kids might have a tendency to kind of wander away sometime without checking in. Now, of course, is this sort of thing tolerated in the police department, for example?
Oh, definitely not, Don. We don't tolerate, or actually, we know for safety's sake. All police officers do that before we ever leave our prowler car or the station, go off the beat, or go on an assignment, that we tell someone where we're going to be. And we wish that the boys and girls out there would remember this. After all, the police officers are trained to take care of themselves, to protect themselves. And yet we know that the most important safety rule is to tell someone where you're going to be. We hope our boys and girls will remember this.
And it's a good piece of advice to remember. All right, now let's get a little bit concerned about the difference between a good stranger and a bad stranger. Now, what's a good stranger and what's a bad stranger?
Well, most people are good strangers. Most men and women and boys and girls, older boys and girls, like little boys and girls very much. And they're going to smile and they're going to say hello. In fact, I hope a lot of my friends right now are smiling at me, because I have a lot of boys and girls that I've met out there in the television audience today.
Sure you have.
But a good stranger doesn't touch a boy or girl. A good stranger doesn't ask a boy or girl to go for a ride with them. A good stranger doesn't ask a boy or girl to talk, to go for a walk with them. And a good stranger doesn't offer a boy or girl candy or money or toys or any kind of gifts. This is a good stranger.
I see. Okay. Now, we're going to watch a film called Dangerous Stranger. And in it, you're going to find some very interesting things, and we'll be back to talk about them.
Hi, kids. I've got a couple of pretty important things I'm going to tell you. I want you to listen to them and remember them. That's me, Jerry King, the policeman, but a pretty good friend of kids if I do say so. I've got 3 of my own, as a matter of fact. I think the world of them, and I sure wouldn't want them to get into any trouble, any more than your parents would want anything to happen to you. And that's what I'd like to tell you about, getting into trouble. You've heard your mothers and fathers talking, or seen in the newspapers, about things that happen to other little boys and girls, haven't you? You know how they went away with strangers and their mothers and fathers never saw them again? I know you wouldn't want to do that to your folks, but sometimes boys and girls forget what their parents and teachers tell them about strangers. And there's always the wise guy who thinks he knows it all. Remember, the kids who get in trouble with strangers are those who forget what they've been told, and the ones who think they know more than their parents and teachers. I'm going to talk to these kids here about the same things. Why don't we all just see how some of the other boys and girls got mixed up with strangers, so we can make sure it doesn't happen to us? Remember the story about the little girl in the paper? Hello, little lady. All alone, aren't you? Wouldn't you like to go for a ride with me? I'll buy you some ice cream. nobody ever saw her again. It was in the headlines and on the radio. You probably heard it. The police believe she was kidnapped. They have no clues to the identity of the stranger in the shabby car. Nobody thought to take the license number of the car, and if you see any little girl... That's the way it happened. And just look at how sad it made her mother and father. I had to tell them about it, all because she forgot what they'd told her about strangers. Now let's look at some of the places and some of the ways you might run into trouble. Let's see what we should do if anything happens. Here's one, a lonely alley. It'd be dumb for anybody to try to harm you with a lot of other kids around, wouldn't it? And what kind of a kid would a man like that look for? That's right, a wise guy. Like Jimmy here, who thinks he knows everything. Maybe he won't get into any trouble, but he's sure taking a chance. I don't think it's worth it, do you? Now, here's a place you always meet a lot of friends, like the cowboy up on the screen and the manager. What if somebody says hello to you or smiles? Well, that's all right. Most everybody likes kids, whether they're strangers or whether they know you. But watch this man. He followed the little girl into the theater. He isn't just an ordinary stranger who likes kids. He might make trouble. Watch. See how he put his arm around her? You should never let anybody do that except your own family. No stranger. Thank goodness this little girl is smart. She changed her seat. Just what her parents told her to do. That's exactly what you should do. The man followed her. So what'll she do now? That's right. Get the usher. If this should ever happen to you, do the same thing. The usher will make sure none of the kids is ever bothered by that man again. You see how it works? If you just remember what you've been told and don't be a wise guy, it's easy to stay out of trouble. For instance, in a place like this park. This little girl's mother told her never to take candy from strangers. Well, she forgot. But her brother didn't. He started to yell, and the man ran away. He was afraid of policemen. Remember that, kids. It's a good trick. Hello, Sally. I'm a friend of your mother's. She sent me to bring you home. Come on. Now, Sally's mother told her never to ride home with a stranger. But Sally forgot, too. It was only because her friend here was smart and took the license number that Sally ever got home. Well, we've seen some dumb bunnies so far, haven't we? But these are the dumbest of all, the hitchhikers. Why? Well, even if the driver doesn't mean any harm, and you're just plain lucky if he doesn't, he may be a reckless driver or a speeder. His car might have bad brakes. The hitchhiker doesn't know. He just goes right along anyway. Well, these kids aren't going to be so lucky. Too bad. They asked for trouble and they're getting it. But thank goodness one of the boys kept his head. He took the license number of the car. And another boy saw a squad car coming down the next street. Maybe the little girl can still be rescued. If they can get the radio alarm out quick enough. Just think, if they hadn't been hitching rides, this needn't have happened at all. But that doesn't help much now, does it? That's lucky. 2 motorcycle policemen got the alarm. And there they go, after him. Just remember, whether you're a boy or a girl, that might be you in that car if you hitch ride. Look at that, they got him. This little girl is very, very lucky. Who knows what might have happened if one boy hadn't been smart enough to take the license number? Isn't it silly to worry your parents and take chances like that? Well, gang, what have we learned from all this? Maybe Dodo here can show us. He does everything wrong. If Dodo meets a stranger in a lonely alley, he just goes right along with him. Or at the movies, Dodo's friends with anybody, stranger or not. Isn't that dumb? Sure, her parents tell her not to, but Miss Dodo thinks she's smart. She thinks they don't know what they're talking about. Do you know what a dodo is? A dodo is an extinct bird. That means it isn't alive anymore. That's the way this dodo's going to be, extinct, taking all those chances. Well, who do you want to be like, kids? A dumb dodo or a really smart kid? Well, that was about what I had to tell you. Just remember those 2 things. To do what your parents and teachers tell you, and to be a really smart kid, not a dumb dodo. If you do, it'll be pretty hard to get into any trouble. Well, kids, I'll be seeing you.
Okay, the story of the dangerous stranger. Now let's ask Officer Hartsfield one more question. How can we apply this now?
Well, the main thing to do is to remember the safety rules that you boys and girls learned from the film, and there were many of them in this film. We'd like you to go home tonight and walk in the house and tell your parent, now sit down, I have something to tell you. Your parents or whoever is taking care of you. Then we would like you to tell them at least 5 lessons, 5 rules for strangers that you learned from the film Dangerous Stranger.
Thank you, Officer Hartsfield of the Seattle Police Department. Good words of advice. Okay, I'll look forward to seeing you next time when, once again, we talk about safety. So long for now.
This series is produced by KCTS through the cooperation of the public schools and the public and private organizations interested in safety education for children. Captain Puget of KOMO-TV is Don McCune.
My name is David Hall. It's been a long road back. It's been a long time since I used that fishing rod. If I'd been just a little bit more sensible, I'd still be using it today. Listening to safety talks is certainly not new to any one of you. It's not hard for me to remember my thoughts a few years ago as I sat in a high school auditorium and heard statistics pointing up the thousands killed and injured each year. My thoughts, I imagine, were much the same as yours are now. Although these statistics were impressive and even shocking, they still, to my mind, were things that happened to others and not me. The thought of being in a car accident occurred to me at times, but in each case, I pictured myself being miraculously thrown clear, or somehow receiving nothing more serious than a scratched hand. I think it is this idea that these things just won't happen to us that give many drivers a false sense of security. I don't think most drivers realize how much they rely on this "it can't happen to me" or "I'll be lucky" type of thinking. I know this was certainly true in my case. Perhaps if I were to tell you a little about my accident and what happened to me, you could get a better understanding of how I held to this type of thinking and just how disillusioning it can be. Let's go back to a beautiful summer day some years ago. A friend of mine had invited me to spend a weekend at his parents' cottage a few hundred miles up north and called for me about 11 in the morning. After packing a few things, like tackle boxes and fishing rods, we took off with visions of big walleyes, maybe even a muskie or two. We were in a big hurry to wet our lines, and my friend hit the accelerator in a late model convertible, and the highway was relatively clear of traffic. I still felt we were traveling too fast. I remember that I was sitting next to the driver, with my knees drawn up on the seat, and my back was against the right front door. But like most people, rather than seem afraid, I just hoped we'd be lucky and nothing would happen. Although I wasn't watching the road, I was told about it later. Another car was approaching the highway from the right. Then it happened. When I finally stopped rolling, I was lying on my back looking straight up at the sky. And I remember I had such a wonderful feeling of relief that I thanked God for not being hurt. Aside from a slight pain in the back of my neck and a little trouble breathing, I thought I had luckily pulled through, unhurt. For a few seconds, I just lay there, saying thank you over and over, until I noticed my right hand lying on my chest was bleeding. I went to move my arm, but to my surprise, I couldn't move my hand off my chest. I was momentarily shocked, but then I thought perhaps I'd broken my arm so that I couldn't move it. Just then, I heard my name being called.
Dave! Dave, where are you?
It was then that I tried to get up. It was a combination of disbelief and terror that passed through me when, try as I would, I just could not move. I couldn't even turn my head from side to side.
Dave! Hey, Dave! If you hear me, answer, will you?
I thought he was hurt and calling for my help. I tried to answer him, but wasn't able to speak louder than a whisper. My mouth was full of dirt, and I couldn't seem to spit it out. Just then, I saw him standing over me. I learned later that by hanging onto the steering wheel, he had managed to stay in the car and had pulled through without so much as a scratch.
Hey, Dave, you okay? Say something, will you?
I tried to talk to him, but found it difficult to force any words out. He told me to lie still while he got someone to call an ambulance. I had to lie still. I had no choice. It seemed like only a matter of minutes before a large crowd of people had circled around. The pain in the back of my neck began to hurt me more, so I kept my eyes closed most of the time. But I could hear people in the crowd saying,
"Oh, that poor kid."
Oh, look at him.
This really frightened me, because hard as I tried, I couldn't see any part of my body, except the hand on my chest, and for all I knew, I had lost a leg. I must have tried to move 100 times, but the only thing I could move were my eyes. I heard someone in the distance, sort of an eerie someone, with a disembodied voice.
Is he dead? Is that poor boy dead?
I remember opening my eyes and looking around to prove not only to the crowd, but to myself that I was still alive. It was a short time after this that I felt a hand on my forehead. I opened my eyes and saw a priest bending over me. He began saying some prayers, which I soon realized were last rites. Well, you can imagine the terrible scare this gave me, because up until this time, I realized that something strange had happened to me, but I certainly didn't think I was going to die. Shortly after this priest had given me last rites, a minister tried to help. After what seemed like an eternity, though actually only about 20 minutes, I heard the ambulance coming. It was really a relief when the ambulance attendants lifted me on the stretcher and I caught a glimpse of my legs and saw that I still had both of them. This may sound silly, but that ride in the ambulance, even with the flashing lights and siren to clear the way, was the most frightening ride I've ever had. It seemed as though we were going so fast, and I had just experienced how fast things could happen, that had I been able, I'm sure I would have asked them to slow down. At the hospital, they laid me on a table and cut off my shirt and trousers. The doctor then did what I thought was a strange thing. He took a pin, told me he was going to start picking me with it, and that I was to tell him when I felt any of the pin pricks. He began at my feet and continued up my body. It wasn't until he reached my chin that I was able to feel any of the pinpricks. He then asked for my phone number and the name of my doctor in Green Bay. I knew he was going to call my parents, so I told him to wait a few minutes until I'd caught my breath, that I was sure I'd be all right. And then I would call them, because I knew that if I called, that somehow I could minimize the whole thing. He then told me that I had fractured my neck and that it was best that he call them now. While they were putting through the call, I was moved to another room where they placed a halter-like device over my head, to which they attached some weights. As I lay there, I thought of many things. I thought about my friend speeding and I was inclined to put all the blame on him. But I realized that I was just as much at fault as he. If I'd had the nerve to make him slow down, well, it was too late to think about those things now. I lay there like that, with my neck in traction, until later that evening, when my parents and a doctor from Green Bay arrived. This doctor removed the halter and shaved the hair off my head. Then he proceeded to drill 2 holes in my skull, one on each side of my head. When he started drilling, all kinds of wild thoughts occurred to me. I had just finished a course in sociology where we'd learned that in certain extreme mental cases that the doctor had been forced to remove part of the brain so as to make the patient more docile. And I thought perhaps they thought there was something mentally wrong with me. But as it turned out, these holes were used to anchor a tongue-like instrument to my head, enabling them to keep my neck in traction without pulling on my chin. At this point, with all the drilling, combined with the pain in my neck and overall weakness, I was inclined to believe that last rites had been in order after all. What happened in the next 4 to 5 weeks is not quite clear to me, as I was under heavy sedation. Although I do remember that the next day they did something to the back of my neck. I was told later that they had been forced to operate because the traction alone had failed to straighten out my spinal cord. I was in this tongue type of traction for exactly 4 weeks. After what seemed like an eternity, they removed these tongs and placed me in a neck brace. Then I was transferred to a Green Bay hospital. After 2 weeks in Green Bay, they removed this neck brace, and I was happy to find that I was able to turn my head from side to side, but I was still unable to move any part of my body below my neck. But I was confident that at least by Christmas time, I would be up and walking around. In October, I was transferred to the rehabilitation department of the Mayo Clinic at Rochester, Minnesota. It was at Mayo's that I was finally told the truth about my chances of recovery. I can still hear the doctor's words.
David, you'll have to know sometime. Although there are rare exceptions in cases like yours, I'm afraid you can't expect much more use of your body than you have right now.
All I had, and all I could expect to have, was partial recovery of my arms and shoulders. I was at Mayo's a little more than a year. During that time, I exercised the remaining muscles in my arms and shoulders and had 4 operations on my hands so as to enable me to grasp things, feed myself, things that I used to take for granted. Yes, it's been a long road back, both for me and my parents. It seems impossible for me to list all the far-reaching effects of such an accident, not only for me, but for my parents. I could cite the thousands and thousands of dollars of hospital and medical expense for what I feared would be my poor employment possibilities as just some of the many problems that just begin with my dismissal from the hospital a 1.5 years after the accident. Of course, there were many things that I would never be able to do again. And the things that I could do had to be done differently. I learned to drive a car with the aid of special equipment that requires only the use of my arms and shoulders. I firmly believe that had I been wearing a seatbelt, I would be up and walking around today. A seatbelt is standard equipment for me now. And believe me, I drive defensively. By defensive driving, I mean the anticipation and recognition of danger. Teaching yourself to be ready to avoid danger at any second. In other words, defensive driving is always expecting the unexpected and being prepared to spot danger in plenty of time to avoid it. The defensive driver is actually driving 5 cars. The first car, of course, is your own. Then there's that car up ahead to watch out for, as well as the car behind you, plus the one on the left and the one on the right. Defensive riding is just as important as defensive driving. To avoid an accident like mine, the passenger should and must speak out when the driver becomes incautious. Remember, the really skillful driver is a careful driver. To drive defensively and ride defensively is to drive and ride with confidence and to avoid the things that happened to me. My case is just one of the hundreds of thousands seriously injured each year. When I read some of the unbelievable statistics, like one person being seriously injured every 22 seconds, I can't help but think of those seriously injured in car accidents who wish, as I do, that they could have just one more chance to be well again. Only this time, they would replace this "it can't happen to me" or "I'll be lucky" type of thinking with the much more reliable "I won't take chances, I'll drive defensively and ride defensively" kind of thinking. Unfortunately, we don't get another chance. But all of you still have a chance to live a normal life and enjoy any or all of the wonderful things the world has to offer. It's been a long road back for me, and a long road still ahead. But if my experience can inspire you to always drive and ride with common sense and never take a chance. It will be a happy road with the best yet to come.
Washington, D.C. John F. Kennedy, President of the United States, names David Hall of Green Bay, Wisconsin, America's Handicapped Man of the Year. This coveted presidential award is in recognition of young Mr. Hall's courageous comeback following his tragic automobile accident and his dedicated crusade to help others avoid the mistakes that led to his own terrible handicap. America's Handicapped Man of the Year, David Hall.
No departures from Center City. Tracks blocked by snow. Number 9, 2 hours late at Janesville.
Chicago, Sampson, terminate flight 17. St. Louis, stand by. Brown, Chicago, Nebo, terminate flight.
He needs you right away, Doctor. You must come.
Hello, George. Kelly, when did those trucks leave Reedville? Holy mackerel. I'm going down to the highway office to check on the roads right now.
Okay, keep that road open.
All right, boss. State plow number 6 signing off.
Hello, Kelly. Listen, Wilson, we need help. 10 of our trucks are lost in the worst storm in years. Now, what's the highway department doing to open the roads?
Well, now, Kelly, look. Excuse me. Hello? Oh, yes, Doctor. What's on your mind?
Is Highway 20 open so I can get through to Higgins Lake?
Higgins Lake? It sure is, Doc. Our men have been plowing that road since the storm started. Go right ahead. You see, Kelly, you're not the only one that's worried about the roads.
It's bad now, and it's getting worse. Snow's drifting to beat the band. Why, I don't see how anything on wheels can move.
The state roads are open, and they're going to stay open. We don't take chances with the main highways. They're too important. Why, we fought this storm before the first snow fell right here on this map.
That's all right. But I'm staying right here till we get word from those missing trucks.
Okay, take off your coat, and I'll show you exactly how we keep these roads open.
They have instructions at my office to call me here, if they ever get in.
Now, on this district map are the main highways. And to clear them, we use trucks. With hundreds of miles of state roads, we have to cover a lot of territory in a short time. Trucks handle easily at high speed, whether widening with one wing of the plow or ramming drifts. They're weighted down to push through drifts, and they have the speed to step along where the snowfall is light.
But how do you keep in touch with them?
Well, many of our trucks have radios, some of them two-way sets. They report progress, weather, road conditions by radio, and we direct the snow fight from headquarters.
Truck 17 calling headquarters.
Here's a report now.
We're up at Big Gap, boss. Route 50's closing up fast.
Send Sam ahead to log the depth. Then get out the rotary and clear the gap. We must keep that road open. We place a rotary plow at Big Gap because that's where it's needed. In the mountain passes, a storm strikes quickly, dumps a lot of snow, and then blows it together, filling the cuts. That truck-mounted rotary is a regular whirlwind for cutting through the drifts and widening out the road as it goes.
Yes, we always keep a rotary plow in reserve near the tough spots.
I get it. You keep traffic moving on the main highways with motor trucks equipped with snow plows, assigned to certain stretches of the road.
That's right. Here, let me show you on this county map how the county engineers work with us. Roads are a system of communication, and cleared roads must connect. State roads with county roads with township roads. Now, beginning this campaign of snow clearing in the fall, we first put up snow fences so that the snow will drift some distance away from the road. That saves us a lot of plowing.
Well, that's a good precaution.
We inspect and equip our machines before moving them to new locations. State highway trucks hauling gravel, dirt, and equipment in the summer are moved to strategic positions on the main highways for winter service. For example, truck number 1 is stationed at Janesville to work a section of Highway 24 with truck number 2 from Center City. Truck number 3 at Johnson clears Highway 50. Number 4 is located at Randon and number 5 at Center City to move back and forth between these towns. Each truck has its assignment and every driver knows his stretch of the road. Equipped with V-type hydraulic plows and side wings, high-voltage generators and roof-type floodlights, these trucks keep the roads open. Cooperating with us, county engineers move their wheel tractors and motor graders from summertime road maintenance work to winter locations on mail routes and other roads. Using maintenance units for these roads releases trucks and tractors to clear snow on highways carrying heavy traffic. And towns and cities clear their sidewalks and streets with wheel tractors and snow plows.
That's all right, but how about the county roads?
County engineers have found crawler tractors well adapted to these roads. Like trucks and motor graders, tractors are moved from dirt moving, excavating, and road maintenance work to the secondary farm and county roads, which they are well fitted to clear of snow. The bull grader blade, shovels, and other accessories for summer work are removed from the tractors, and cabs, plows, and floodlights are put on to fit them for winter work. Williams in Farmington County clears a tough stretch of road with a crawler tractor. There are places on Williams' route where the wind gets a 40-mile sweep, filling ditch and road with snow. But Williams knows that milk is waiting to go to the city, that mail and supplies must come out into the country, and he keeps on going. Wherever they are, these men of the highways are fighters. While the storm continues, they stay with the plows, risking frost-bitten faces and feet. In Maine, Michigan, Colorado, and Washington, in every state of the snow belt, men are matching their strength and the strength of their machines against wind, sleet, and snow. Taking the drifts as they come, they steer their heavy equipment over roads that are hidden, opening them up to keep food, mail, and the necessities of life moving over the main highways and the country roads. The highway departments of every state are proud of their men and the machines they use. But to be effective, these men must have the right equipment located at vital points, ready at a moment's notice to maintain a network of cleared roads. Courage, cooperation, and equipment are what it takes, Kelly. Excuse me. Hello? Yes, it's for you.
Hello? That's great. 2 of my fleet are in from Reedville, report the road's clear and the load safe. That plan's okay, Wilson. From now on, no matter how bad the storm, we know that traffic will go through.
Hey there! Hey, boys, that pike road ain't open, is it?
It sure is.
It is? Well, I'll be dad burned. Gosh, won't be able to tell the wife that I was snowed up in town tonight. Well, good night, boys.
In the Douglas fir region of the Pacific Northwest, timber topping is a spectacular logging job. Yet when safety rules are followed, topping is a safe job. This top is undercut to fall to the left, but a sudden change of wind takes it over backward. The man gets clear quickly and easily, for he knows the first rule of safety. Be alert. Expect the unexpected. He is safe. All loggers, high riggers, or ground crew can be as safe by being alert, by knowing and following the safety rules. In the Douglas fir region, loggers work over every kind of country. Taking the logs from these canyons, side hills, and flats is a job for men who work safely. For experienced loggers take no chances with heavy logs and powerful machinery. Whatever the lay of the ground, a spar tree is the center of operations when logging with donkey engines. Top guy lines and buckle guy lines support the tree. The high lead system is commonly used to yard logs to the spar tree from a radius up to 800 feet from the spar tree. The north bend system is often used to swing logs to the spar tree at 1,600 feet, particularly when it is not practical to build roads. The interlocking skidder system, used on long hauls across rough country, is capable of carrying logs completely off the ground. In all these systems, the spar tree is prepared by limbing and topping a standing tree if one is available. The safety of the whole operation around the spar tree depends in part on the selection, preparation, and rigging of the tree. The climber himself inspected each piece of his equipment, even if it was brand new, before he brought it out on the job. The climbing spurs are sharp and of proper length, with pads to comfortably fit the legs of the climber. The belt is the right length for this man. Buckles and straps are in good condition and are completely fastened. The axe is very sharp, short-handled, with blades and handle in first-class condition. It is tied to a cord or rope, which is securely fastened to the belt. Climbing ropes have flexible steel cores. No other rope may be used. The knot must be easily adjustable, since the tree tapers to smaller diameter as the climber gets higher. With all equipment in good condition and properly fitted, a careful, experienced climber moves safely and rapidly up the tree trunk. Limbs are cut off flush with the trunk, so there will be no stubs to foul rigging. Between 6 and 16 feet above the point where guy lines will be attached, the tree is topped. If conditions required, the top would be wrapped with a small line to prevent splitting. In this case, a saw is used for the undercut. Next, the axe. Then the back cut, cornering as in falling. Conditions of wind and heavy limbs which might pull the top one way or another have been noted. Descending to the point where the rigging will be attached, the climber, as a necessary precaution for the safety of men working under the tree, removes all bark that might be rubbed off by the high lead block or other rigging. As the climber nears the ground, the saw and the axe are swung well out of the way. He is as careful not to get cut while on the ground as he was not to fall while at the top. Donkey engines on sleds pull themselves to spar trees. When moving up or down hills, the donkey must be securely tied down to one or more solid stumps before the moving line is changed. Roof wings are bolted solidly in place to prevent being jarred down on the engineer. At the tree, riggers check their equipment to see that nothing will fall. At least 4 tree plates spiked in place are required to prevent cutting by guy lines and block straps. In rigging up,
Distinct, well-understood hand signals are always used. Securing guy lines and block straps to the tree requires careful workmanship by experienced men. Proper tightening and spiking of each guy line to its stump is the next step in making the tree safe for production and the crew. The stumps are selected, properly spaced, sound, well-rooted, and deeply notched to prevent slabbing and to hold the guy lines firmly in place. A line is attached to the guy line and power is applied. Care and experience pay off in safety when tightening the guy line to just the right tension. Proper spiking is necessary to prevent slipping during logging. Hold each spike firmly and hit squarely to keep spikes from flying through the air. The lip of each spike must be driven firmly over the line. At least 8 spikes are used on the first wrap. Unexpected overhead hazards are possible everywhere in logging. Crew members always wear hard hats on the job. Hard hats have repeatedly saved loggers from serious head injuries. At least 2.5 wraps are taken on each stump, each wrap being tightened and spiked securely. When 6 guy lines have been tightened and spiked, plus buckle guys if needed, the spar tree is strongly supported from every direction. A safety strap protects the crew if the high lead block breaks loose. A spar tree must be raised if there is no standing tree in the landing area. Safe practice requires that a tree be raised if available standing trees are of doubtful height and strength for the yarding job contemplated, or if hidden defects are indicated. The raised tree is rigged in the same way as a standing tree. Later, when the area around the spar tree has been yarded, the guy lines must be removed. Extreme care is taken to avoid endangering the crew when the guy line tension is released. The safety wrap will make the line jump clear without whipping around the stump. A spike keeps the safety wrap from springing back over the stump. The man releasing the last spikes sees that other men are in the clear before going ahead. The line snaps free without whipping back, and what was potentially a dangerous job is safely completed. Bending the knees and swinging the weight is the sign of a man who knows how to pick up a heavy block without straining his back. Bark, chips, and stones on the caulks are felt through the soles. Get them off for your own protection. To lay down a load and slide off a log is as quick as risking a jump. The best path may be picked at a glance, yet even the best path holds man traps. Alertness is the logger's best protection. Every man who handles lines watches for jaggers, especially at eye splices. Good gloves, worn regularly, protect the hands of men who handle rigging. Hands are kept off fast-moving lines. A stout pole is used as a guide, or, if available, a soft metal bar. Each man knows the location of first aid equipment, which is maintained for his protection. Wherever first aid training courses are available, every man should take advantage of the opportunity to get training which may save the life of himself or a fellow worker. Replacements of items used from the first aid supplies must be made promptly, and the kit returned to its proper place after use. All first aid equipment should be ready for instant use by trained men, should the need occur. Before logging begins, the signalman runs an electric wire from the donkey to a spot where he can see and hear the choker setting crew. Splices must be secure, for failure of the signal wire would seriously endanger the crew. When the signalman and crew are in position, the wire tested and lines cleared, yarding will begin. In all the normal steps of the yarding operation, sending chokers out to the woods, setting them in position on the logs, and pulling the logs into the landing, there are hazards. Yet constant alertness in following a few basic principles will enable all loggers to work efficiently and safely. The first principle is loggers work as teams. On the choker setting team, the rigging slinger is responsible for the safety of his men. He picks the logs for each turn and gives all the signals. The signalman is part of the team, linking the crew and the engineer, who often relies completely on the signals. Teamwork gives protection. These men are sure that the choker bell is placed where it will not slide onto the head or hand of a man working beside a log. When the chokers are set, the men get away quickly. The rigging slinger sees that each man is in the clear and each log choked correctly before giving the signal that starts the logs toward the landing. Sometimes a log lies in such a position that it cannot be choked near an end. The hook tender, who is in charge of the yarding crew, can have it choked in the middle and pulled into the clear. The safety of the yarding operation depends to a great extent on the planning of the movement of logs to the landing. This is the responsibility of the hook tender. Safety requirements are carefully considered in his planning. For instance, he knows that center-choked logs are likely to whip, throw chunks, and arrive at the landing crosswise. With the choker reset, this turn can be safely yarded to the landing. Teamwork between the engineer and the rigging crew under the hook tender is essential. The second principle is each logger must recognize and avoid bites or danger areas. The area inside the angle formed by the line running through a block is dangerous. If the block breaks loose, the area will be whipped by the heavy line. This can happen without warning if the line, lying slack on the ground, is suddenly jerked taut. This angle is a bite, and it is dangerous. Danger areas are also made by moving lines or lines about to move. The whipping of this line covers a wide area. It would snap a snag or sapling like a match and is moving much too fast for a man to avoid. Flying chokers may tear and break anything they hit, creating danger overhead. Loggers recognize all danger areas and keep out of them. When a turn of logs moves, each log creates a danger area. The entire area downhill from a turn is dangerous. When the turn starts, loose logs frequently roll. They sometimes roll clear to the bottom of the hill, and sometimes stop, then roll again. Expect the unexpected. Flying chunks may be one of the surprise results when a turn begins to move. The danger from whirling logs covers wide areas. Chunks may be thrown, saplings knocked over, and other logs set in motion. When logging downhill, choker setting crews avoid danger areas by going uphill before the turn starts to move. Far up the hill, the entire crew gets well in the clear of possible rolling logs, flying chunks, and moving lines. On a side hill also, above and behind the turn is the rule. The crew goes far to the side when yarding uphill. A rigging crew in the clear is far to the side and behind a turn on flat ground. The men stay on their feet and keep their eyes on the moving turn. Not all logging is done in the sunshine. When the weather is bad and the footing slippery, all the normal hazards of logging are multiplied. Danger areas are even larger than in fair weather because logs and chunks start easier and slide farther and faster. In spite of stiff clothing and hidden hazards to footing, the crew must get in the clear before the turn starts to move. When logs are piled in coal decks, a big enough landing area should be prepared so that the logs can be pulled evenly to the spar tree. Snags and saplings must be removed. Any long logs are left behind the pile. Jumbled piling must be avoided. Part of the logs in this coal deck have been swung out. The hook tender looks over the pile for his next turn. The crew is in the clear of any hazards made by swinging chokers as the rigging comes back. Individual care by each man means solid footing on slippery logs and loose bark, while all work together in choking the logs picked out by the hook tender. Hard hats and gloves are taken for granted as necessary personal safety equipment. Every man must be very certain that logs will not slip or roll before going between them. When the logs are choked, the men get off the pile, out of reach of rolling logs. They take a position well in the clear, on their feet, where they will have an unobstructed view of the moving turn. Then the signal is given for the logs to be moved. The logs making up this moving turn were picked with the idea of breaking down the face of the pile, rather than letting it get steeper. Steep coal deck faces make hung-up logs, rolling log bites, and heavy pulls on the rigging. The hook tender and his crew are keeping the face of their pile in safe condition for good production. Many of the same danger areas are found in tractor logging as in donkey logging. Here, all signals are by hand, so the driver has to watch for signals, guide his tractor and arch, watch the road, stumps, saplings, and snags, and be alert for changes in position of men. In tractor logging, tops and limbs can be thrown long distances, or snags may be brushed by falling saplings. The crew studies the overhead hazards and gets well in the clear every time logs are moved. Although every tractor is provided with an overhead and a back guard, the experienced operator pulls into the clear before starting the full turn. This is done to avoid just such hazards as this falling sapling. The crew, well aware of the constant presence of overhead hazards, is far out to the opposite side, away from the danger area. Tractors are often used to swing logs from a hot deck to a landing for loading. The tractor operator knows his machine, his load, and his road grade. This tractor is moving over a good road system toward a well laid out landing. At the landing, proper fanning of the turn spreads the logs. The chaser waits until the backing tractor comes to a dead stop before going in to unhook the chokers. The chaser and the landing crew get clear whenever logs might roll. Whether logs are being landed by tractor or donkey, a well-cleared, well-arranged landing area contributes greatly to the safety and efficiency of the landing and loading crews. Any snags or saplings within reach of men, machines, or guy lines must be removed. Boxes for tools are part of good housekeeping. This large landing has been cut out of a mountainside. There is plenty of room to pile logs out of the way of incoming turns. If men are working in the way of an incoming turn, it is the duty of the chaser to stop the turn until the landing is clear. Correctly choked near the ends, these logs are easily pulled into position for landing. When he is satisfied that the logs will not land crosswise or roll off the pile, the chaser signals for the turn to be dropped. Properly landed logs should not roll, shift, or slide. The chaser carefully watches for possible rolling logs as he approaches the pile. Safe yarding requires that the pile be left in good condition for the loading crew. Loaders are constantly alert for swinging rigging and insecure logs. Cooperation between the chaser and the loading crew is essential to safe landing operation. The yarding of logs ends as loading begins. Each load that goes out safely yarded is a tribute to the rigging, yarding, and landing crews, to good supervision, concentration on the job, to knowledge of the hazards and alertness in avoiding them by each man of the crew, to teamwork, allowance for the new and inexperienced man. In short, it means safety and good production, for the two go hand in hand.
This is Bikini. It is here that the military and scientific personnel of Joint Task Force 1 will conduct the tests with the atomic bomb. Only by unleashing the destructive force of atomic energy against an array of ships could the Navy determine the future ship design of modern naval sea power. The target orientation for Test Able was based on the directive of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. It required that the 90 ships anchored in Bikini Lagoon be so disposed as to secure graded ship damage ranging from maximum to minimum. The battleship USS Nevada, bomb aiming point, has been anchored at the exact center of the target array. Here to witness the completion of preparations is the President's Evaluation Commission. They will report the tests to the Commander-in-Chief. Lashed to the decks of ships are samples of military supplies and equipment. Airplanes, jeeps, trucks, and tanks, themselves targets on target ships. Animals were placed aboard some of the ships to substitute for military personnel. A study of their future life history will provide invaluable information. Steel towers 75 feet high have been erected on Bikini Atoll. Within these structures will be housed the remotely controlled cameras and specially designed scientific instruments that will record the data resulting from the blast. Many types of special motion picture and still cameras were encased in huge lead vaults. These unusual enclosures, built of reinforced concrete to withstand the primary blast action, were lined with thick sheets of lead to protect film from the effects of radioactivity, which would otherwise fog the sensitive material. To further protect film from the effects of radiation, sliding lead panels built over the camera ports and designed to close automatically will seal the vaults, making radioactive penetration impossible. The immense task of transferring personnel and the vast quantities of supplies, instruments, and special equipment from Kwajalein to Bikini was relieved by PBMs of the Naval Air Transport Service. Secretary of the Navy James Forrestal comes aboard the USS Mount McKinley and is greeted by Vice Admiral Blandy, commander of Task Force 1. The Navy Secretary will be among observers witnessing the experiments. Preparations are now complete and crews abandon their ships. Shown here is Captain Low H. Bibby, commanding officer of the venerable old battleship USS New York. Everything is in readiness for the test-able experiment, and military and scientific personnel leave the target area. On Able Day -1, command ships proceed to an area approximately 14 miles from the lagoon where the blast can be safely observed. Dawn on Kwajalein, July 1st, 1946. This was Able Day. Army Air Force camera, observation, and weather and instrument planes prepare to take off. The B-29 and C-54 photographic planes bristle with cameras of every type and description. With almost 500 cameras trained on the blast, the test will be photographed from every possible angle. Poised on the loading ramp is the B-29 Dave's Dream, bomb-carrying aircraft. Army engineers of the Manhattan Engineer District have assembled and loaded into the huge plane the bomb that will be dropped on the target fleet anchored in Bikini Lagoon. With her escort of photographic and weather and instrument planes, Dave's Dream proceeds to the Bikini target. On EB Island, Navy camera planes, huge PBM flying boats, are loaded with still and motion picture cameras. Accompanied by Air Force photo planes, these ships will circle the target, photographing the atomic explosion. At Eniwetok, Army Air Force drones are preparing to take off. These pilotless planes will be guided through the center of the cloud column to record scientific data, as well as to provide valuable information concerning the effects of the blast upon military aircraft. On board USS Shangri-La at sea, Navy F-6F mother control planes are catapulted from the carrier's flight deck. When the monitoring planes are properly located over the ship, the drone aircraft are launched and temporarily guided from the carrier until control is picked up by the planes in the air. Everything is in readiness now, and history is in the making. Observers at sea impatiently await the blast. 0 hour rapidly approaches, and cameras start to grind. Just before the explosion, blast gauges are parachuted into the target area from weather and instrument planes. The bomber is over the target. The bomb is away, and 1 second to go. In the following view, the blast will be seen as was photographed in slow motion. In this view of the blast, recorded from a camera tower on Bikini, the suction caused by the explosion can be seen pulling the soot from the ship's stacks into the center of the rising column. The towering cloud column rose to a height of almost 8 miles. After dropping the atomic bomb, the B-29, Dave's Dream, returns to her base at Kwajalein. Not far behind are the Air Force photographic planes with a film record of one of the most amazing and spectacular events in the annals of history. Cameras are removed from the planes and the exposed film forwarded to photographic centers for processing and distribution. B-17 Air Force drones land at Eniwetok. These planes, guided through the center of the cloud column, gathered radioactive dust particles in large filter bags suspended from bomb racks. The deadly radioactive dust bags are removed and carried to laboratories for testing and analyzing. Navy F-6F drones, flown back from Bikini by mother control planes, prepare to land at Roy Island. When the drone's near the ground, air control is switched to the ground control officer at the edge of the flight strip, who lands the pilotless aircraft. Like the Air Force drones, the Navy fighters carried air scoops containing special filter papers for determining the concentration of radioactivity in the cloud column. Crews removing the dangerously radioactive materials were carefully indoctrinated in the procedure of handling such objects in order to avoid lethal burns from the fission products, deadly gamma and beta rays. Meanwhile, at Bikini, inspection parties make a preliminary appraisal of the damage to the target fleet. Burning from fires started by the low-order detonation of torpedo warheads is the aircraft carrier Independence. The light carrier was heavily damaged. The blast struck the ship on the port quarter, warped, buckled, and carried away light plating and pushed up the flight deck so that it looked like a rooftop. The Independence-class carriers are built on lightly constructed cruiser-type hulls, which accounts in part for the heavy damage. Aircraft carrier Saratoga was undamaged except for a small fire in supply stores. The battleship Nevada, target ship of the array, suffered moderate superstructure damage and the deck aft was buckled. The paint on one side was scorched, but did not burn. The period between the Test Able and Test Baker experiments was an extremely busy one. The immense task of making detailed and comprehensive inspections, recording data, and reorienting the entire target fleet for the underwater test was completed. During this time, Vice Admiral Blandy flew to Rongerik to see King Judah, ruler of Bikini. During the friendly visit, the Admiral presented King Judah with several gifts. At sea, aboard the aircraft carrier Sador, a naval photographic officer briefs the photographic plane pilots and lens experts who will photograph the Baker Day blast. Also taking off from the carrier are control planes that will guide the radio-controlled drone boats. In Bikini Lagoon, radiological reconnaissance boats directed from low-flying aircraft will be used as safety patrol vessels. Immediately after the blast, these drone boats equipped with special instruments to record radioactivity will be guided through the target area to capture samples of water and air. Determining the concentration of deadly radioactive particles is of the utmost importance, since invisible gamma and beta rays kill without warning. Aboard the firing ship USS Cumberland Sound, the Los Alamos group of the Manhattan Engineer District enter the timing laboratory, where the radio transmitters and specially constructed instruments for detonating the bomb are located. The timing laboratory scientists pass into the master control room. Dr. Marshall Holloway, leader of the Los Alamos group, unlocks and personally throws one of the master transmitter switches. The timing laboratory is a complex interlocking system of radio transmitters, timing recorders, and scientific apparatus. As each hour approaches, generators are started, transmitters warmed up, graph cards and time recorders changed, and everything made ready for the blast. Each hour, minus 2 minutes, is broadcast from the ship, and all hands stand by. Sitting at the central console switchboard with a microphone is Dr. Ernest Titterton, assistant to Dr. Holloway. As he announces each hour minus 30 seconds, Dr. Holloway throws the 30-second switch. Dr. Titterton at the automatic firing panel board prepares to broadcast the last 15 seconds.
15, 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire.
These pictures of the descending water column show the expanding cloud of spray and fog at the base of the column, moving outward and covering the ships in the target array. Great quantities of radioactive water from the column descended upon the decks of the nearby vessels, and ship hulls a mile away were drenched by the wall of foaming water. This wall of lethal spray and fog eventually covered the entire target fleet. The next scene is a spectacular aerial view taken from directly over the blast. Here is one of the drone airplanes flying over the target fleet after the blast. Photographic planes return from Bikini and land on their floating bases at sea. Cameras are removed and the exposed film forwarded to the Naval Photographic Center in Washington, D.C. for processing. Despite the presence of radioactivity, safety patrols immediately entered the lagoon for a preliminary appraisal of the damage. In an effort to reduce dangerous contamination, ships were sprayed with water and special chemicals so that inspection parties could board them. The destroyer Hughes, her hull ruptured by the blast action, was beached on NU Island in sinking condition. Admiral Blandy, General Kepner, and Admiral Parsons survey the damage in the target array. Shown here is the Japanese battleship Nagato, which flooded and capsized 5 days after the blast. Seven and a half hours after the explosion, the aircraft carrier Saratoga, grand old fighting lady, sank as a result of heavy underwater hull damage. It must be remembered that the primary purpose of the Bikini experiments was to secure precise technical information which will be used to determine necessary changes in the design and construction of all military equipment and especially Navy vessels required to maintain your Navy at maximum effectiveness. We must be fully prepared to protect our national security promptly and effectively in the event that we are attacked. We must defend ourselves against this new and elemental force or be destroyed by it. This is Crossroads.
With a yawn and a stretch, and eager to play, Susie's smile bright awoke to a beautiful day. She dressed in a wink while sniffing the air. It was Mom making breakfast. Oh, joy, not a care. Susie flew to the bathroom. Zippity-doo. No more than a second before she was through. Then down the stairs feeling happy and gay, never dreaming her smile was gone for the day. Susie ate all her food, as good children do, then plopped on her hat, said, "Goodbye, Mom, adieu." Along came Bill Blue Eyes. Her heart went kerplunk. Susie's hero, of course, that beautiful hunk. He said, "Hi, Susie," in his usual style, with a mile-wide grin and a glistening smile. Then the world seemed to crumble as Bill said to Sue, "Your smile's disappeared. What happened to you?" Now, who ever heard of losing a smile? A glove or a shoe, yes, but never a smile. Susie looked everywhere from the time she arose, beneath her bed and the chairs, even inside her clothes. But alas and alack, Susie broke down and cried. She just couldn't find it, no matter how hard she tried. Then Mom to the rescue, the one who knows best. She said, "Here's your smile in the medicine chest. Remember, Sue dear, you must take your time. Brush after each meal and remember this rhyme. Up like a rocket, down like a plane, back and forth like a choo-choo train. Sweep up on the lower teeth. Take your time, don't rush. Slow but sure is the best way to brush. Sweep down on the upper teeth, first outside, then in. Get inside the spaces for a dazzling grin. On the incisors by cuspids and molars, it's important not to race. The magic number for brushing is 6 times in each place. Back and forth on the chewing surface, like a choo-choo train, till they feel as clean as a window pane. Susie brushed and she brushed, the way she just learned. And by golly, like magic, her smile had returned. Susie kissed Mama Smile Bright, then ran like the wind to find Billy Blue Eyes and his mile-wide grin. He said, "Hi, Susie," in his usual style. Then Susie gave out with the world's brightest smile. Billy Blue Eyes was dazzled. He covered his eyes. Susie gave him a present, sunglasses, just his size. Now Susie's the envy of everyone in sight. By brushing correctly, you too can be bright. A more dazzling bride never walked down the aisle. A storybook ending of Susie's lost smile.
What does one under the influence of LSD hear, see, and do? We're about to take you into the world of the LSD user. A world that to him is real, yet as terrifying and unreal as anything ever imagined. We call his trip of terror to fly a giant bird.
Play some music.
I'll be cool to all of your charms, and I'll be oh so cool when you're in my arms. And if you ever say to me, please love me do, I'll say pass, 'cause I'm a guy who's got a love cool.
steal my money. That's what I've got for a wife. But I got 'em, well, I got 'em. It ain't gonna be so funny. Well, I'm gonna sharpen up my knife. Revenge, that's what I want, revenge. That's what I'll get, revenge. Well, it's my turn. Well, I'm gonna watch 'em, I'm gonna watch 'em, I'm gonna watch 'em turn. She's a devil, she's wicked, she'll drive a man insane. Tried to make a fool out of me. But I caught 'em, well, I caught 'em. The love is all in vain. Now they're never gonna be free. Revenge, that's what I want, revenge. That's what I'll get, revenge. Well, it's my turn. Well, I'm gonna watch 'em, I'm gonna watch 'em, I'm gonna watch 'em burn. Revenge, that's what I want, revenge. That's what I'll get, revenge. Well, it's my turn. Well, I'm gonna watch 'em, I'm gonna watch 'em, I'm gonna watch 'em burn. Revenge, that's what I want, revenge. That's what I'll get.
Oh, God, this ain't the best centennial anybody ever had.